Hi, this is Lauren from Queen Laura Creations. Today I'm on the Possum Stamps YouTube channel to show you how I created this Slimline card using a couple of stamp sets from Possum Stamps. So the stamp sets that I use today are the XL birthday greetings and also the So Many Candles stamp set. And jumping right in, I created a Bristol Smooth cardstock panel, and I made it a slimline size, so 8.5 by 3 3/4. And then using a scrap piece of paper, I just kind of tore off the edge and placed that over the bottom portion of my panel. And because I wanted pigment only at the top portion, I didn't want it all the way down the panel. So I spritzed the part of the panel that shows with some water, and then I dropped some dry pigment in, and I used shades of pink, a purplish color, and then like a teal green. And then after I added all, and I just used a dry brush for that, a dry paintbrush. And then after I got all the pigment on, then I spritzed it again, and you can see how the color really comes alive after you've spritzed it. And then I took the paper off. I noticed that it left too much of a line. I didn't like that stark line, so I added a little more pigment on there to get more of a organic look, and then just kind of spritzed it again. And then I set that off to dry, and I went on to create my cake. So onto a Bristol Smooth cardstock panel, I used embossing ink to stamp that on there, and then I added embossing powder in white, and then I heat set it. And before I stamped it, I prepared the paper using an embossing powder tool, and what this does is lays down a little film of embossing powder, powder, so that the embossing powder doesn't stick, so it resists any stray powder from getting on your panel. And then I will paint the icing, the dripping icing, in pink. So I added water to some of that pigment to create a watercolor, and then I just paint that onto the dripping icing, and I do it kind of darker at the top, and then the drips will be a little bit lighter. And I add that to all 3 layers. First I get the area wet with some water, and then I put in the color so that it will flow a little bit easier on the wet image. And then I will do the top layer as well. And this pigment has a really beautiful sheen and shine and shimmer to it. So in real life it looks really beautiful, but the camera doesn't really pick all that gorgeous shine up. And then I clear that off, and then I'm going to, for the little stripes on each layer, I will add some green and also a little bit of the purple. So I thought I was getting purple at first, but I realized I had the lids on the wrong containers. So then I added a little bit of purple as well. And so I end up, when I'm painting this, I wasn't really happy with the way the purple looked. I wanted more of a contrast. So when I put the purple in, I wasn't keen on it. So I ended up dropping some of that teal in as well. So first I add water, and then I add my pigment in as it flows better. And I have it darker at the edges and then lighter toward the center. And then I will set that off to dry. And once it is dry, I fussy cut it out using just plain scissors. And what's great about this cake image is you can use it for all kinds of occasions. You don't have to just have it for a birthday. It could be for a bridal shower. It could be for a wedding. It could be for, you know, birthday or a baby shower. All kinds of different occasions you could use this stamp set for. It's so versatile. All right. And then I just make sure all of the areas are colored. And then now that my panel is dry, I add the little confetti. So there's two kind of long confetti and then a little circle one. So I put that onto an acrylic block, and then I put it onto some embossing ink, and then I add my white powder, embossing powder, and then I'll heat set that. And again, I use the embossing powder tool over top of that pigment so that, again, I wouldn't get stray bits of embossing powder. And then I'm heat setting it. Now you want to make sure that you're moving your heat gun around a lot so that you don't kind of scorch the pigment or the paper. And then I saw some areas that I wanted a little bit more confetti in. So I just repeated the process by, you know, getting the embossing ink, powder, and then heat setting it. And then when I was finished heat setting it, I saw that some of the some of the confetti didn't stand out as much. So I went in and added more of the pigment color. So I spritz it and then add more powders. And I really love this look. It reminds me of those little those tubes that you shoot out, and, you know, has the colored pigments for, you know, a gender reveal or something. I think that's so fun. Look, all the videos that I watch are people messing them up and getting powder everywhere. So then I die cut that down using a Slimline die from my stash. And then I use the Cue the Confetti stamp set from the XL birthday greetings. I love that sentiment, Cue the Confetti. It could be used for, again, a lot of different occasions. And then I, again, emboss that in white. And what's great about the stamp set as well is it has coordinating dies. So for all the sentiments, there are coordinating dies that you can purchase as well. And so after I've heat set it and it cools down, I die cut it out, and then I will put pigment on that as well, because white on white, it doesn't stand out. So I add my pigments, the 3 of them, and then I will get that spritzed with some water. And then I ended up with a little bit too much water, so I just used a little paper towel to soak up some of that water. And then once it is dry as well, I get the pigment, any pigment that has dried on the embossing powdered words will come off as well. So there we go. I just wipe that down. And then some of the words, there's some pigment missing from around some of those words. So I just go in with a little paintbrush so that you can see and read the Cue the Confetti words a little easier. So I'm just adding a little bit of that pigment to some of the areas. And then I will create, oh yeah, I created a flower for the cake because I was going to use a candle, but the candle, it didn't look good with the confetti where I wanted to have the sentiment. So it would have been in the way. The candle would have been in the way. So I decided to use a flower, and I ended up really loving it. I created 2 flowers and painted them differently, but I preferred the one that I'm showing you here. What I did was I added some of that pink pigment, just painted that into the individual petals, the pink. And then when the pink pigment was dry, then I put in a little bit of purple right toward each petal towards the inside. So I had the purple and then the pink. And then in the center, I used a yellow. It's kind of a sunshiny yellow. And I only needed a tiny little bit, so I just dipped my wet brush into the cap. And then I fussy cut the flower out. And it's really easy to fussy cut it out. You just, because of the embossing, it gives you a guide. I like embossing my images when I watercolor because I'm not the greatest watercolorist, and when you emboss your images, it creates a well almost, so that when you're painting, your watercolor doesn't spread around into areas that you don't want it to go. So that's why I often will use an embossed image when I decide to use watercoloring. And then for the background of the panel, I place it onto a little bit larger panel of pink cardstock that kind of matches the pink in the image. And so I back it on there with using just some liquid glue. And then I will adhere that onto my Slimline card base. And again, the dimensions are 8.5 by 3.5 that it cuts down to. And then I adhere my confetti, cue the confetti sentiment on. Here I am just figuring out the placement. And I adhere that over the cake. And then I want to add a little dimension to the cake, or to the card, so I bump up the cake using some double-sided foam squares. And I really wanted to use double-sided tape, or double-sided foam tape on a roll, but I am completely out. So I had to use little foam squares, and that's quite a lot on there, so it's a little fiddly, so I cut it out of the video so that you wouldn't have to watch me fiddling with all that. And then I again took the release paper off, adhered it to my card, and added the flower. So I am really happy with the way that this card turned out. You should see the shine. It's super pretty. So thanks for visiting. Don't forget to like and subscribe.